Tricia Barker's life was forever changed after a serious accident that nearly took her life. During surgery, she had an NDE, near-death experience, which transformed her life, giving Tricia a new outlook on the world. Today, you'll learn about this incredible near-death experience. Tricia Barker grew up in East Texas, enjoying a childhood with a few happy moments alongside her best friend, exploring the charms of the countryside. However, her mother had some mental health issues, and Tricia became vulnerable to physical and emotional abuse. Studies became an escape for her, offering hope for a different future, away from the pains of the past. Determined to build a better life for herself, she devoted herself to her studies with the goal of attending a good college. After finishing high school, Tricia enrolled at the University of Texas, where she initially found academic success. However, her college life was negatively affected by involvement in parties and alcohol, resulting in a gradual decline in her grades. Aware of the need for change, she knew she had to reassess her choices and priorities. Until then, Tricia hadn't given much thought to spiritual matters, such as the nature of the soul and life after death. For her, death simply meant the end of consciousness, a return to the earth with no continuity. The traumas of childhood and subsequent involvement with alcohol left Tricia with some emotional issues, leading her to seek professional help. During one of her therapy sessions, her therapist recommended aerobic exercises, such as running, as a way to help with therapy. Fortunately, running was something Tricia already enjoyed, and she could easily run up to 10 miles a day. On the eve of one of her runs, Tricia was haunted by premonitions in the form of nightmares, although her disbelief in such phenomena led her to ignore them. The next morning, tired and without her usual dose of coffee to keep her alert, Tricia stopped at a traffic light, watching a car approaching at high speed. Unable to fully comprehend the situation, suddenly, the car at 60 miles per hour collided with Tricia's vehicle. She recounts,
Immediately I knew something was wrong with my body because I was slumped over to one side and I couldn't reach my driver's license and insurance forms, and I couldn't move, basically. And I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. Eventually, a Good Samaritan stopped, and she was a nurse. She stayed with me, held my hand, and she was beautiful. I'll never forget the kindness of her. She helped me until the ambulance arrived and they put me on a board. The closest thing I could say to a prayer was, God help me. That moment, control is taken out of your hands in a moment like that. And we spend so much of our time trying to control life. And in that moment, I knew it was over. Everything depended on the surgeons, what happened next. It was out of my control for the most part. All I had was my voice as the one thing that might be able to help me along this way.
Tricia was quickly taken to the hospital, where a series of procedures were performed due to her internal injuries and spine broken in several places. Fear and pain were overwhelming. Few people fully recover from spinal injuries without consequences, and Tricia feared she might never walk again. The painkillers no longer worked, and Tricia was plunged into agony, screaming and crying. She had to be restrained for 17 hours to prevent her from hurting herself even more. Finally, after a long wait and suffering, a neurosurgeon agreed to perform the surgery, although he was exhausted after a 40-hour shift. But finally, someone would perform the procedure. However, the surgery was extremely risky. With a 17% chance of death, it was extremely perilous. But the things Tricia loved, like running, studying, among others, outweighed the fear of death itself, and she was determined to proceed with the procedure. Before the surgery began, Tricia recalls the doctor squeezing her hand, and then her consciousness seemed to detach from her physical body. She says,
The minute I popped out, I was kind of in the corner of the room looking down at the surgeons and looking down at my body. And when you're outside of body, you don't see with normal eyes. you kind of see with this 360-degree vision, and you can zoom in on something, or you can see behind you, but it's not that important. You're mainly looking at what you're looking at. But I remember the tops of the surgeons' heads, and I remember their hands, and I remember that there was a song on the radio. There was actually an Elvis song on the radio. It was the easy listening station. And so I was like, oh, I know this station. And so there was, a lot of awareness of the room itself and of the surgeons. And then I thought, oh, I'm alive. I live beyond this body. And I was so excited. I wanted to tell my agnostic friends in that moment. I was like, oh, I could explain this to them. They will understand. Consciousness definitely goes on. It was a much longer time period that it took to actually communicate with them. But I thought that moment was profound enough. Just looking at my body, looking at the surgeons, I was happy. I mean, there is no word that describes that happiness. It was relief and absolute peace that we go on. I was convinced in that first moment because my consciousness felt at ease.
Tricia also recounts that upon leaving her body, there was no more pain, only peace. She felt more intelligent. She reports seeing behind the medical team there were some beings of light. She calls these beings angels. They were tall, and she could feel that they were very intelligent and didn't communicate like us. It was only telepathically. They were there to assist the medical team, as if they were guiding them. She could communicate telepathically with them, and they assured her that she would be healed, that she would be fine, that she would walk and run again. Imagine the happiness of this girl upon hearing that. This occurred at a critical moment during Tricia's surgery when internal bleeding caused significant blood loss, leading her heart to stop beating, and she clinically died. However, outside of her body, she was fully conscious, able to see and hear everything around her. There was no death, only a sense of freedom and an expanded perception of reality. Tricia described her out-of-body experience as a journey beyond the bounds of physics, where she could pass through walls and move freely. At one point, still in the hospital, she observed her stepfather, who was health-conscious, buying a chocolate bar, something he wouldn't normally do. This peculiar fact was later confirmed, further validating her experience. Drifting out of the hospital, Tricia experienced an intense sense of peace and happiness, although she knew she would eventually have to return to her physical body. While out, profound insights into the nature of life and consciousness emerged in her mind. The idea that earthly existence is only temporary, the possibility of reincarnation, and the expansion of consciousness now made sense to her on a deeper level. Moreover, Tricia experienced that in that state, she could emotionally connect with people she had known, feeling their feelings and experiences in a unique way. Her journey out of the body not only transformed her understanding of life and death, but also how she treats other humans and her connection to the whole. Tricia also says that she found herself in a lush place, filled with vibrant vegetation and grass with vivid, radiant colors. There, she had a poignant encounter with her grandfather, but he was more beautiful and younger, as if rejuvenated. Although her grandfather had passed away years ago due to leukemia, in this place, he wasn't dead. On the contrary, he was full of life and vitality. Tricia described the atmosphere as permeated by deep love, tranquility, and absence of fear, making it the most comforting place she had ever experienced. At another moment, Tricia noticed a wall of energy, which she intuited to be a boundary between her current state and something beyond, where if she crossed it, she might not return. The wall seemed to be a limit. The wall seemed to vibrate, inviting her to look down. Upon doing so, she saw a river where people walked on the waters. Some of these people were enveloped in a very bright light, connecting to a larger source, which she interpreted as being God. Despite the difficulties, the doctors managed to revive Tricia. Upon returning, she found herself confused, as if she were trying to adjust to a different reality. When nurses asked her name, she responded as if referring to someone else. Her name is Tricia. Perhaps it's hard to readjust quickly after experiencing such a transcendent place, where she felt connected to something greater and more meaningful, both individually and collectively. Tricia tried to talk to various people about what she had experienced in the hospital and later with her family, but people weren't very receptive. Some even thought she had gone crazy. But Tricia knew how real that experience was, and she has changed a lot since then. Although most of us may not experience something as extraordinary as Tricia's, we've all faced the loss of a loved one whom we'd like to reunite with. Experiences like hers offer us a different perspective on life, showing that our current existence isn't the end of everything, but rather part of something greater, with the possibility of a dimension beyond, where our loved ones may be present. Thank you for sticking with me until here, and I'd like to encourage you to share your own story, whether to inspire others or simply to express yourself. Subscribe to our channel, and until next time.